Um, let's go. Hello, hello, everyone. We are super duper excited for each and every last one of you to be in here today. This is our Her Mind Matters Part 2, and this is the series that we wanted to talk about women in leadership and how it affects their leadership in terms of their mental health. We were fortunate and absolutely overwhelmed with all the responses from our Part 1, which talked about trapped trauma. For those that are interested, please go to our YouTube page and be able to look that up in for your enjoyment. Today, we're going to talk about the PTSD of not just being a Black woman, although that is how I titled it, but it's the PTSD that occurs in women, primarily Black women, when they are in leadership. So I want to welcome all of you that are in Facebook land. We also want to welcome all of you that are in Zoom land, my little terminology for it. And just excited. For those who do not know who I am, my name is Dr. Lakita Long, and I get the wonderful opportunity to being exactly what I love to be, and that is a marketplace evangelist. I love giving people information. I love motivating, inspiring, training, and teaching other people how to be their absolute best self. I get a chance to do that every single day of my life. And I'm grateful for the last 2 years. I get a chance to wake up every day and create my day, my time, my energy, and my hours. And so for that, that is absolutely fantastic. One of the things that I also do is we do a lot of stuff with mental health in the church. We have a program that allows us to be able to work with people that are in the church and who provide an understanding of their need for mental health resources and services. So we get a chance to do that, and I'm just ecstatic to be able to do that. So for all of you guys that have joined and have jumped on, what I would like to be able to do is just for a moment, I want you to consider those that are leaders. I'm definitely speaking to every woman leader. My heart reaches out to women leaders. And I've been in the business of empowering women leaders, whether it's been from the collegiate side of being a professor, and I've been a professor in a variety of different disciplines, which has been very interesting and really a blessing. My background's in counseling and psychology, and so I've been also able to do collegiate type teaching and professorship in organizational psychology and organizational development and communications, and just fortunate to be able to have that. But one of the things that I've learned, and I'm still learning, even as a woman leader, is that there are many things that we do that we don't know that impedes our ability for our level of success. And as a way to just sort of get us jump started, for those that came on, I've already said my thank yous, but I always like to say something very specific as it pertains to the why I'm doing this topic. So I thank each and every last one of you for stopping by, because I believe that this information will literally radically change the way in which you lead. Sometimes we're not better because we don't have more information. And it's super duper important that we have the kind of information that is necessary, the kind of information that is available, and the kind of information that makes us all really think much more differently than we should. Okay. And so if you've not seen part one, I'm going to share with every leader, and I said this before, make sure you do that, because a lot of why we don't lead well is because we've got trapped trauma inside of our bodies, and it's affecting every particular area of our life. Okay. Every particular area of our life. And so with that, I want to give a special introduction to all of you that are on this particular class. My specialized conversation today is that it requires us to look at three things. Number one, we're going to look at the plight of women's mental health who are in leadership, just the plight of women's mental health in leadership, okay? And we are going to then decide how we're going to look at the reality for some Black women who deal with mental health issues or PTSD merely just because they are Black and that they're a woman. So we're going to look at that dynamic. That was number two, right? And then number three, we're going to look at ultimately and discuss the signs and symptoms of PTSD and how work-related stress impacts and creates trauma that decreases our ability to lead well, okay? I'm a very messy kind of person. Don't have a desirability to be confrontational, because I try to be very clear and distinct and very forthright in what I'm saying to individuals. The times that I feel like things are not clear, whether it's coming from me or people are not hearing me as being clear, is two things. There's either something going on inside of me that I feel is happening and I'm not vocalizing it, and or the individual is somehow pushing back on whatever needs to be changed. So I'll run into that conflict. At the end of the day, when we are leaders, no matter what one or two of those instances may be for you, as it is for me, I still have to choose. I have to choose to do the route that's going to give us the ability to be our very, very best self, okay? And so we can't do that without looking at women, the plight of women, their mental health, and them being in leadership, and then being able to look at Black women, the reality that Black women have about being, and then the third thing is the whole aspect of discussing the signs and symptoms of PTSD, all right? So let's get started. I think it's always important to me to lay out a foundational piece about why this conversation is necessary. As I was doing the research and looking at the numbers as it pertains to women's stats in leadership, I found a document that was dated November 2018 from the Center for American Progress. And in there, the authors of that, which was Judith Warner and Daniel Corley, they talked a little bit about and gave stats of about 9 pages worth of information concerning women and leadership and what functionality women played in that level of leadership. It's always interesting to me that when we're talking about women, they have conglomerated all women together. But then always at the end of the stats, always at the end, they then say, but women of color make up out of this number 9%. So we're going to see that when I start to talk about the stats. Women constitute a majority. I want you to understand this. Here we go with the stats. A majority of the US population. Currently, right now, for the US population, it is stated that there are 329 million people in the US today. Out of that, it is saying that women constitute a majority of that US population. All right, here we go. Women make up 50.8% of the US population. So a little more than 152 million people in the US are women. I want you to kind of get the figurative understanding about the stats concerning women. All right. Now, I already know that Black people only make up 13% of the United States population. So if we looked at Black people making up 13% out of the US, so we have 329 million in the US, and Blacks make up about 13%. So we're looking at about 10. Wow, that's really a trip. We're looking at just underneath, about 16 million, no, not 16 million, sorry, 16 to 32, about 38 million, maybe a little bit less, of the 329 million are Black people. I want you to get the enormity of what we're dealing with, okay? 38 million out of the 329 million. And out of that, I did not see the stats for how many women make up Black women. But that would be great. So if somebody has that information, definitely shoot that to me. So 50.8% of the US population is women. Now here goes some of the stats. Women earn more than 57% of undergraduate degrees. Really important for you to know this. And 59% of all the master's degrees that are given out, women earn them. Women earn 48.5% of all law degrees and 47.5% of all medical degrees. Women earn 38% of MBAs and other generalist degrees, 49% of specialized master's degrees. Women account for 42% of the United States labor force. Yet, we are still trying to fight for equality in terms of dollar per dollar, cent per cent, per hour, in terms of being able to get the fair wages that men counterparts have. 52.5% of women are college educated in the workforce. That means that all those that are in the workforce, 52.5% that are in the workforce that are women, they're all college educated. And yet, 52% of all management and professional level jobs in America are what's attributed for American women. There's only 52% of all the management jobs do American women. And I'm sure that number is very, very small for Black women. In the legal profession, 45%. Women make up 45% in the legal profession. But here it is, 22.7% are partners, and even a lower number for equity partners, meaning those who put up their money in order for the law firm to take place, 19.7%. In academia, the earned doctorates, women have surpassed the number of earned doctorates in 8 years in a row. 30% though, watch this, 30% of women are full professors, only 30%. So a 70% of professorship goes to men, and then 30% college presidents. So only 30% of the college presidents are women. There's also the politician side, the political side, and we can kind of already see that number, but let me just tell you, 24% women politics make up members of Congress and members of the House of Representatives, and only 23% of the Senate. So very, very small numbers. And there's a reason for that as well. But women of color, here we go, represent less than 9% of members of Congress, 20%, not 20, 2% are governors, Black, minority, women of color, 10% of mayors in the nation's 100 largest cities. And I wanted further clarification in regards to women of color. Is that Black women, or is that diversity? Because, they move these terminologies over all the time. The stats are alarming, and for many different reasons. But what's really alarming more so to me is that when you have these women that already have systemic and institutionalized sort of racism kind of going against them, having the right degree, having the experience, but not being able to land the job, that's one form to me of trauma, if you allow it to be. But the second form is when women of color that are Black women have to deal with the fact that they're going to be seen as superwoman. So they should be able to have a higher load of leadership than anybody else, or they should do the job of two CEOs versus one. And if by chance they should get a level of pay of, let's say, $5 million a year, which is low for any CEO of a 500 or more company, they're made to do 8 to 10 different jobs. And it's statistically shown that they're made to do that. And so where I wanted us to look at in terms of the stats was for you to have a grave understanding of just where the numbers are, but don't lock in to the numbers. I'm not concerned about the numbers, right? God has an ability to move us all in places where we should never be, right? I'm sitting at tables today, right now, where I'm sure there's probably more distinguished people and things of that nature right now, but the Lord saw fit to allow me to be in conversations, even a conversation I was in just a couple of days ago with AC Green, who is, you guys might know who he is. He was an NBA 3-time basketball champion. I was on a call with him and FaceTime, Zoom, or just today reviewing, just getting involved in a variety of different things that normally we don't have our stamp to be able to do that. So I don't want you to get stuck there. Where I want you to focus on is this next element, which is the plight of women in leadership and their mental health. For years, at least 100 years, women have wanted space and a place in the work world that was equal and comparable to men, and not so they can flex their muscles, that they can show a man that they can do what a man can do, but just merely to have the opportunity to being able to just provide for themselves. Women in leadership and in mental health, according to Forbes.com, they did an article December the 23rd, 2019, that suggested that more workplace leaders were needed to talk about their own mental health other than just utilizing celebrities because they felt like that was not enough. So I brought this whole conversation piece because I know it's a topic that needs to be talked about in leadership across the board, but I thought I would talk to my sister girls out there who are in leadership first about the power of owning where you are mentally, and how do you get from underneath the stigmatization of being able to share where you are and still being able to move forward. 60% of US employees expressed symptoms of mental health conditions in the past year. The same amount also have never spoken to anyone at work about their mental health status. Business leaders, some say, are equivalent to that of celebrity influence in the workplace. Therefore, I'm doing this teaching, training, whatever you would like to do, or just side chat conversation to help to reduce the stigmatization that business women leaders have and why they don't speak up, but also to make it known to the Black woman that it is not it is not good for you to withhold talking to someone about your mental health. Most Black leaders and Black women leaders, when they get of age, they find out that they've had conditions in their bodies for years. And when they trace it back, it will probably have been there at the start of a major career change and leap. But they were so on the go that they didn't stop. And then one day, their body just said, enough is enough. And they got an aneurysm or some other kind of thing, or their blood pressure, that high risk for all these different types of stuff. And nothing to me, and I'm no medical doctor, but in terms of me just reading and just dealing with my own body, nothing that happens in our bodies, in our minds, and in our hearts happens overnight. Everything has its time lapse to it. If our bodies are starting to show that something is not well, you can best believe the entry point of that foreign thing in your body didn't happen yesterday. It might have happened 2 weeks ago. And now it's at a point where it is like busting itself to try to get out, right? It's the same way with mental health. If you go to a job and you are irritable the moment you drive up on the parking lot structure, for example, and just the mere thought of having to address a colleague who tries to condescend you, but you are their boss, or someone who tries to use their authority to usurp authority over you, like directors sometimes get into, pissing matches, if you will, excuse my French, but pissing matches with Black women in leadership, as if they're not subjugated under their authority as well. And while they may have a direct supervisor, when you are a CEO running an organization, a CEO gets a chance to scan everything. But for Black women, sometimes unspoken, it is said to Black women, stay in your place. Go out, make us money, increase our bottom line, but don't you dare try to be the head, person in charge. Only on paper, but not in practice. Only in theory, but not in professionalism. And yet, many Black women in leadership have been the sole reasons why some companies have not folded over. Okay, super duper important to understand that. So, as a way to better delve into this whole issue around women in leadership and mental health, we needed to take a further look at PTSD. Many of you probably have heard the terminology before. PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. It is a mental health condition that comes from basically someone who experiences or it is triggered by someone who's had a traumatic or terrifying event. They can either do two things. They either have experienced the event themselves or they witnessed it. Now, for those of you who grew up in various areas in your life where it's either kind of hood or non-great areas growing up, you probably fall into one of those two categories. You might have experienced PTSD, hearing guns throughout the night, or seeing somebody gunned down, or a bus running over somebody, or you might have been the person to experience. So you might have been a witness to it, or you might have experienced it. Some symptoms that are included in post-traumatic stress disorder is flashbacks, nightmares, severe anxiety, to the point where some people will start to pick at their sores. It's a reflective kind of coping mechanism that people have when they've gone through PTSD. They have the desire to just pick at themselves, pick, okay? Severe anxiety, uncontrollable thoughts about the event, cannot stop thinking about the event over and over, play it so much that it's what they wake up to, okay, if that makes any sense. PTSD usually starts within 1 month of the activity or the event that has happened, or sometimes it may not show up for several years. That is the power of stored trauma. That's why we did part 1 the way we did it, because if you have stored trauma and have not released it, that trauma and the cycle of it is still in your system. And if you don't release it by way of talk therapy, by way of doing some other cognitive behavioral work, well, it just gets played out in other areas, okay? There are 4 elements to PTSD that you should think about or at least know in your hearing. It's intrusive memories, avoidance. So when you find yourself in constant wanting to avoid a certain thing or whatnot, a certain area in your job, the workplace, I want you to look and see if you're not traumatized by something and see if you need to really review where you are so that you can make sure that you're not being held hostage by PTSD. The third area of PTSD is it changes your thinking, okay? It changes your thinking and your mood. And on number 4, it changes your physical and emotional reactions. Your physical and emotional reactions. So I'm going to give you some very hopefully up close, personal kinds of things that one may experience in terms of a case study that you might be able to relate to. So a person, a woman of leadership that may have experienced PTSD might be someone who's had this happen. They passed all the tests, but did not still get the job. You passed all your exams, all your tests, but you didn't get the job. That level of rejection, if it's happened more than once, and it can happen to a person that's fixed mindset. So if you've been following me, you know what fixed mindset is, where they start to believe that, why am I not good enough? I keep doing all the tests and I keep passing all the tests, but I still don't get the job. That can create a PTSD situation. A second case study is where you've worked in a place a long time, only to never be promoted because they unconsciously and some directly believe that you're only best suited to train the incoming leaders for that role rather than you yourself be a leader. Does it make sense? So for example, if I was held in a position, I actually worked with a lady at a job in a county office who, when I got there, she was in that situation. She was the best, but they would never ever promote her. And I was trying to explain to her in some ways, it's your demeanor. Everything matters. It's your demeanor. They should not have had any kind of pushback, but it was her demeanor. It was her no nonsense attitude. And the no nonsense is great, but if you're not sitting at the table, you don't need to have the no nonsense attitude. That needs to be that it's a part of how you move, but a smile goes a long way. Unless I have real reasons to believe a certain thing, I'm not going to be so militant about a thing until I'm able to be in front of you to discuss what that thing is, if that makes sense. And I hope you were able to follow that. So in the situation with this particular case study, the lady was there for a long time. She was under a boss and then got to another boss, and her and that boss was great, which was also my boss. Great boss. But she had a tendency to tell her boss when she had an issue. And so sometimes it just felt like she would go above that boss's head to give her issue or situation to someone else, rather than trying to form an alliance with the current boss that totally enjoyed her and loved her to help her to fight for whatever it was that she wanted. So she was always seen in the office as being like a troublemaker and things of that nature. And while it may have been not a great thing for them to put the cap on her, they did. It wasn't until she actually moved into a whole nother department in a whole nother city that it was lifted. Imagine that. Very, very interesting, right? Okay. So being in the third case study, being in a room and suddenly realizing that everyone changes their tone and interaction about certain particular things when they're discussing things in a meeting, as if to suggest that if they disagree with you, you're going to go off. I have heard people believe and say that some Black women are intimidating, or they don't like to see Black women with their hair cut short. I've heard some people say that with just women in general, if they're wearing too much perfume, or they're trying to do something else other than their job. All of those things are sexist, and all of those things are awful. My job today is to bring to light the power of who you are as a leader, period. And that it is your business to stay updated, relevant about leadership skills, styles, and the way in which you decide you're going to make an impact. See, my concern about mental health women in leadership, and particularly Black women, is that we tend to know a lot, but what we're not doing, just my thought, my opinion, is we're not properly tracking our leadership movements. And I, prime example, I'm grateful for my habitual desire to write. I'm always writing, have always done that. But I remember one time I was trying to apply for a job. This was maybe in 2000. And so we're talking 20 years ago. But by then, I still already had a good 10 years in the various industry that I was looking at to apply for. So I was 25 years young. And I remember thinking, why am I still looking at jobs that's like $40,000? I almost like had that part-time, while I was in high school working for the state. And I looked at my resume, and actually she looked at my resume. She's a wonderful, wonderful person. Her name is Penelope Larry, and she was phenomenal. And she was like, okay, because your resume suggests like you just got out of college. And I said, what? Your resume is not current to what you produce and what you are. And that was like, and she had actually told me that when I was 21 or 22. But you listen to people, but I didn't update all the resumes. And so that thought process came back to me at 25 when I realized I'm not getting any of these jobs. What's going on here? And it was because I had not updated to what I was actually doing and staying adept and current with the language that recruiters and bosses use in order to bring people in. So I want to share that some of your trauma or your feelings of trauma is simply, I think, because we're not up to date with what's going on. It is a scary thing and will bring depression and anxiety when we're not up to date with what's going on. I know, for example, I'm in a group that runs a group that's got a little more than 200 women. And a couple ladies confessed. They were like, whoa, I should not be this behind technologically speaking. And I am. Because somewhere in some of our brains, we thought we should not go for it or we should not learn it. But if you're 70 years old and you're living in 2020, 80, 50, 40, 30, there is no age limit, in my opinion, that would suggest that you should not be fully adept to some type of form of technology and really utilize the phone much more for just you using it. Particularly now, since we have switched from in-person to a virtual platform that I do not believe is going to change. I think everything down to our medical stuff is going to be virtual forever. That's just what I believe. In thinking of all of that, I want you, if you are a woman and you are in leadership, I want you to think about maybe the last situation that you had, whether it was one of those 3 case studies or similar to it, or just your own thing, whether you feel like you're the only Black person in executive leadership or whatnot. What I want you to consider that if you feel like you have PTSD, or if every time you get an email from your boss or your boss's boss and it makes your stomach tighten, well, you're probably got some stuff going on. Because when you get an email from your boss and you're doing your job, then you just got an email from your boss. And that's really what I think sincerely. And it's a mindset that you do not have to be afraid to show up every day being Black, being a woman, being a leader. You should not, but many Black women are, and they do a lot of what's called in sociological terms code switching. And code switching is what allows many Blacks to survive. It's the thing where they know they go to work and they are just, yes, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And then when they get to the car and they're calling the girlfriend, girl, my God, so they code switch. They cannot really fully authentically be themselves for fear that they won't be taken serious, or someone will take the information and use it against them at some other time. My concern is about how you process what's going on in your life as a leader. and where you plan to go or what you plan to do when needing to move forward. Move forward. So let's pause for just a moment because I've said a lot, and I just want to make sure that we're all in the same path. Not every Black woman in leadership may have PTSD. Not every woman may experience any form of mental health issues inside of the workplace. I just choose to believe that some of our body issue stuff that we have got going on, um, tumors, I just have my own thought process about all of it. I just think that when our mind and our brains are not aligned, it messes up our body. I just believe that. If your heart feels that everyone at your job is against you, your mind is trying to say they're not, but what ends up happening, your body ends up telling the truth about it all. It's true, they're against you, and now because you're fighting so much, your body starts to break down. And with this COVID-19 going on, we need our immune system to be well. And if you're not being clear-minded, if you've got mental health issues around depression, anxiety, paranoia, bipolarism, OCD, obsessively thinking, anxiousness, panic attacks, all that kind of stuff. If you've got that stuff going on, well, it's definitely going to decrease your ability to fight off any foreign things going on in your body. Super duper important. For the last part that I want to say as it pertains to Her Mind Matters, I did this because I'm gravely concerned about how women are viewed when something does happen that's different from the norm of what normally does happen. Men are even encouraged and told, take off a couple of weeks, come back when you're fresh. A woman, she said and told, it will be very difficult. If you need to take off a couple of weeks, do that, but we will have to take your vacation time. We will have to do X, Y, and Z. Or maybe you might want to reconsider that maybe being in leadership is not really for you. So then all these other factors start coming into play for women. Maybe it's too much for you, and you are your mom too, and all these other things. And I've witnessed this incident happen on both parties, just being a part of the HR dynamics and watching how one man's application can go through without without any issue, but the woman's application for time off is scrutinized and almost penalized. Okay. And I'm here to tell you, open your mouth, be vocal. No one will penalize you for not being where you need to be mentally. So you need to say, hey, I'm feeling like I need to just take some time off. I know normally we do a one mental health day. I'm gonna need to take 5. Where in our company would allow me 5? If there's not 5 mental health days, we need to create it. With all that's going on, shelter in place, people are not okay. And you should be advocating seriously for more mental health resources and services available for you as a leader and as the workers that are underneath you. People are unraveling. Their spouses are having to be at home with their spouses much more. And the only way their marriage has been making it is because both of them are out of the house 10 to 12 hours a day. They only got a short little period of time, kissy, make love, go to bed, and do the whole cycle again. Many people are not accustomed to actually doing the partnership of marriage and having children running around where you got to get schoolwork together, and et cetera, et cetera. So I hope that all makes sense. Make room for your mental health. You will need it as we continue to get more closer to what's to come in our world system around a multiplicity of things, one world order, all of those types of things that are on its way. You cannot afford to not know how to mentally get out of a situation, okay? As we prepare to close, there are many of you that are probably saying, I probably do got a little trauma. They harassed me on my job. Make sure you talk to someone, talk to your HR. If you cannot trust your HR, then you need to talk to an HR attorney or talk to an employment law type of attorney that can give you some guidance and assistance, because you want to be able to document everything you need to fairly, squarely, and accurately. But the most important thing is that you have the ability to have the voice that you absolutely need to have concerning your health. Mental health is just as important as if you had cancer and anything else. Even though you can't see mental health, it's actually shown often, quite often. All right. I hope that you understood just a little bit about that process, but I wanted to leave enough time right now for us to do questions and answers. Many of you guys are on Zoom. I do have help and assistance that will unmute you to ask the question so that people can hear it, and then everyone can hear the answer. Okay, if you don't have to show your face, you can just unmute yourself and then ask the question. All right. So while we're waiting for those particular questions to go on, let me have a thought process for each of you to consider. I want you to know that we are not supposed to be in competition with the male gender. Okay. I don't care what the world system says. And you want to make sure you don't have it in your head that you're trying to do a thing as an act of revenge or competition. I really believe that. It always does a disservice to the entirety of who you are. Everything that I do, everything that I have done, this is the God honest truth. It has always been because I wanted to do it. It's never been because I wanted to get to a certain place because someone else got there. And Oprah Winfrey was a great, place and people. And I used to just say, wow, just would love that. But I always did what I did for myself. And it makes it feel better when you do it out of that versus because you're trying to have revenge or compete or something. Okay. So we're not in competition with men. We love men, even those that do us wrong. Every man will have his day. All right. Every man will have his day. Every person will have their day if they are circumventing a position. But truly, I believe no matter how much circumventing a person does, they can never stop what God ordains, no matter what. If it's 10 years, 20 years, 2 years, 2 months, whatever God has orchestrated for your life, it is going to happen. All right. So are there any questions that anyone has at this particular time? And if not, then that is super duper okay. But I want to give a few seconds to asking those who are on, if you have any questions that we might be able to help those in Facebook land as well. We talked about the PTSD of being a Black woman in leadership, the plight of it, and go from there. Are there any particular questions?
Hi, Dr. Long. At this time, we do have
Wonderful.
question that I see.
Well, good. I like when there are questions, but I also like when there are not any questions.
Absolutely. So,
And I can't hear you.
You can't hear me, okay?
Mm-mm.
You still can't hear me?
So while I wait to hear from her,
Can you hear me at this time, doctor? All right. Are you able to hear at this time?
okay, can now try it?
All right. Can you hear me at this time?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. What advice can you give pertaining to asking for a merit increase when it has been said that there is a cap, especially if you are a trainer of other leaders?
So let me make sure I got this question right. What advice would I give to someone who wants to get a merit-based increase, but there is been told to you that there's a cap, even though you train other leaders?
That's correct.
Yes. So there's a couple things. First, you would do it like you would ask for the increase as if you were asking for a team member. But this time it's for you. You need to have made sure, number one, that you've had your evaluations already done and that they were pretty good. Okay, so before you ask for merit-based, think that the evaluation has come across and you were good. The second thing is you want to make sure that look to see was someone else promoted in a position, the same type of position, and got more monies or whatnot, just for you to have that reference before you even ask. So you want to just kind of find out what is going on. Has departments been collapsed? So you have as much information for yourself when you need to go to negotiate. The third thing that I would do is you just got to be straightforward. Let's say you're in a job and you're making 100,000, but all of the, let's say, all of the HR directors right now for nonprofits, they're making 140,000 for that particular size nonprofit. And you've been there for 10 years and you have managed to assist in the recruiting and all that kind of stuff. There's nothing wrong with you saying, hey, I would, and they, who's the 100,000 is what you've been at for 10 years. But what's the cap? If everybody else in the industry is doing 140, what's our cap here? Let's say they say that the cap is 100,000. Then you need to say, I'm wondering if there's a possibility that we can look at possibly getting me closer to the 130 or the 140 that is nationally done. It's about being bold and it's about having a reason as to why you would ask. Because the only thing they can say is no, but then you start to ask them, what's your reason for it not being able to be done, especially if you understand the books that you guys are in the black, you're not in the red, you've had the bottom line has been increased. Like you got to know all your facts in the case that they should try to come up and say whatever kind of stuff. You need to say, well, I know for the last 4 years, our profit sharing has increased by 65%. And I know that we've been able to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, does that make sense? So they may have a cap. And let me say this very clearly. They may have a cap. You don't have a cap that's attached to their cap. I've been in too many positions and situations where one day I was like, why am I only getting $42,000? What? What is going on here? And my mentor told me it's because you keep asking for $42,000 and you keep looking at everybody else's $42,000 when the white counterparts, women that don't even have all the information and education and experience that you have and do, they come in asking for $65,000. This was 20 years ago. So it's about you being bold to ask. Boldness, timing, and make sure you have your information.
Awesome. I believe that's the only question that we've had on both platforms.
Okay, awesome. Love that. Let me say something else too, which is why I'm so big on women taking full responsibility for your full entire life. I know that when I lost 50 pounds, 2017, when I started walking, I really was paying attention to in a whole nother kind of way. Oh, wait, hold. Okay. I literally was paid attention to in a very different way. I can account that at least two of the contracts that I got, it was simply because while I was always cheery, but I simply got it because I looked different. I looked different from when the last time they saw me. And it didn't bother me, but it definitely intrigued me that, wow, this dynamic is very, very real. I didn't even have to go through the various steps. It was like, hey, you meet with so-and-so on so-and-so day, and they'll just let you know what the need is, and then they'll go from there. So you didn't have to go through all these hoops just based on the look. May not be fair, but I always tell people, you must present your best self. We should not be judged if we're 80 pounds over, but for some, it does impact how they're going to do business with you and what they're going to do if you are in their job, okay? I do see a,
I have another question.
yes.
Can you speak on the importance of mentorship slash networking for women leaders?
Let me tell you something. I was just reviewing because several women have asked if I've mentored them, and I already currently mentor a lot of women and young adults. That is premierly important. If a woman who's successful right now tells you she doesn't have a mentor, I can tell you she's gone through a lot of stuff she had no business going through. Sheryl Sandberg, who is the CFO, I believe, of Facebook, she has a wonderful book called Option B. Her story is incredible. You got to read the book. Her husband ends up dying, first husband, and it devastates her. And she's just like, what am I going to do? I mean, the story's incredible. And she didn't necessarily think that one should have an option B. What's the option B? But the reality is she had mentors, and the mentors guided and steered her to not stop being a woman of power and leadership and influence and all of that. And because of their advice and them helping to open up doors, a real mentor knows their mentee, they know them. So therefore they lend the credibility of their Rolodex to their mentee. Now, if you are not a person that follows through and all of that, and then your mentor is not going to take you serious. But it's absolutely imperative that you have a mentor. Matter of fact, I just introduced my mentor to something. They in turn wrote me back and said, let's do it. Now, this is going to be the biggest thing I've ever done. Let's do it, because it involves finance, capital, real estate, all this kind of stuff. And I said all that to say that mentors need to be flexible, that you don't have everything, but a mentor has enough to help you to navigate where you should go. It's really important. You should be networking with other women leaders, that kindred spirits. Get with somebody that wants something for your best interest and that is not in competition with you. I don't mind mentoring anybody. What I cannot stand or deal with is if you waste my time we can never get back. And wasting my time is if you get information, but you follow up on nothing. I'm a get it done, action-oriented person. So if I say, hey, I would reevaluate X, Y, and Z. If you're serious about getting out of a situation, then you should be telling me in 1 week, I reevaluated, did X, Y, and Z, because I am sure 100% that when you do the various things, you will be somewhere else. I am a momentum driver. I am a pusher, but I cannot deal if you drag your feet. So yes, to the answer. Mentorship, networking with other women leaders are absolutely imperative. Absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Long. Do you feel women need to understand more about masculine and feminine energy to work better?
That's a very interesting question, and it's a very tricky question, because one of my greatest attributes, but it was also my longest prayer after I got divorced, was, Lord, please do not allow me to have a masculine feel to who I am as a divorced woman. I wanted to be feminine because I am feminine. I love being a girl. I love being a woman. I just think it's all sexy and just all powerful, right? But I wanted the softness of it. And I wanted the strength of who God has made me to shine more than the masculinity of who the world system tries to make women to be, if that makes any sense. And so I focused my energy for 4 or 5 years. Just, Lord, show me how to do it. Show me how not to let my feminine energy be a manipulative power towards the masculine man, but that I just walk in my beingness, if you understand me what I'm saying. Understanding the two and the differences, making sure you're not more, into the masculine feel is great. But I would focus on what's the way you want to present yourself. I want to be seen as an inspiring, encouraging woman who happens to be Black, that when I leave your presence, you know that someone other than just a woman has been here, that the presence of God came in the room with me. That's what I want. I want that impact is made. And I want that if it's through my girly perfume or my 5-inch heels that I like to wear because it makes me excited, does that for the atmosphere? Great. But I wouldn't focus too much on trying to learn it as much as making sure that you don't have the masculine energy. You don't need it. You don't need it. And when you look at Deborah in the Bible, Barak chose her because just wasn't nobody else. So he needed a judge, and she was a woman, and she was there, and she was equipped to do the job. I don't think she had to put on the male thing in order to judge. Or else, if they thought that she did, I don't know if the Bible would have distinguished her as being a woman and being a judge. I think the Bible was trying to give us clearance that you can be a woman and a judge and still leave an imprint. And I just think that there's a way to do things. There's a way to fire. There's a way to do stuff, and and I think you just have to learn what that way is. Are there any other questions?
I haven't seen any others at this time.
Okay. There's not any other questions. Okay. So we are almost at our time of coming to a close. That time went by really, really quick. But I'm hoping that at least the discussion has been gendered, that you don't need to go to a job that makes you feel small or put you in an anxious situation where you're like coming out of your job and you're blowing air in a bag because you're having a panic attack. Okay. Super important to understand that your life as a woman is important, just like their life as a man is important. The job for you is to make sure that you are in an okay space mentally to lead people well, to lead people well. And that is what really is very, very important. So, okay. So very, very important. Are there any other questions? This has been so exciting. I just wanted to kind of just jar you guys a little bit to really, oh, let me just say this. Now, this is my caveat as we get ready to exit. You cannot say, beautiful women, sister girls, that you're trying to lead anybody if it comes off because of how you move that you are messy. We have got to be not ever seen as being messy. Whatever form of leadership, on the job, in the ministry, in the church, you cannot be seen as messy. The second thing, it's one thing if they lie about you and say that you're messy, but it should never ever come back to you that you really are. Okay. Number two, and this is just all from my learning, trial and error. You need to be a consummate reader. You do need to read. You need to read. You need to read. You need to be able to give people resources outside of just your experience so that they can have an objective look at other ways in which they can become their very best. Super duper important. Be a reader. If you're leading anyone, be a reader. Number three, even in leadership, you got to be quick to make the choice to say, oh my God, I was totally wrong. I had that whole situation wrong. I did not account for X, Y, and Z. So then the next thing you do as a leader is, how do we fix this? What is my responsibility and what should I be doing to take care of this? We're not talking bad about the people. We're just getting the job done to solve the issue. And I hope that makes sense. My last thing that I will say, thank you, Holy Spirit, for reminding me concerning leadership. You have to remember, if you are leading anyone, it's an honor to lead. So please come to work honoring those that you get to lead as a servant. It's an humbling space to know that every single day, your hand, your stroke of the pen says whether or not somebody gets paid or not. But remember, you're in that position today. You might not be in that position tomorrow. So however you judge people, that is the way you'll be judged also. That's just scripture. So be humble in leading. Be humble in how you lead. Don't be a doormat, but be humble in your leadership. Does that make sense? And then lead, thank you, Siobhan, lead with integrity. Lead with integrity. Yes, you have to. I don't get it all right, but I'm quick to tell you, blew that. That's not ready yet. That's not happening. That's not happening. Let me slow it down, but lead with integrity. Super duper important. Leadership is an honor. It is. We have about a minute left. So, are there any other questions that anyone has?
There was one more question. Can you
Sure.
hear me clearly now?
I can hear you very clear.
Okay. Does everyone suffer from a mental illness? This comes to us from the Facebook audience. If you could repeat.
Very interesting. Now, no, everyone doesn't suffer from a mental illness in the world, but everyone can be exposed or predisposed to mental illness. And remember, mental illness is not the fact that today I'm feeling blue. If I'm feeling blue today, doesn't mean I have depression. It really does mean that I'm feeling blue. But if those symptoms of feeling blue last 2 weeks or longer, and it's impeding my ability to do productive work every day and have an outcome of what I'm accustomed to having, then yes, I've got something else going on. If it's starting to change how I think about myself and other people, then yes, I do. And so for that amount, according to the Mayo Clinic and different ones who have National Institute of Mental Health, NIMH.org, they have suggested that more than 60% of people in America, and I think I had said that earlier, 60% of people in America have claimed that they have some form of mental health issue. And that can be small as anxiety, which most people have anxiety more than depression. 41 million people in the US, and I think that number is probably higher than that, has anxiety. About 26 to 30 million people have depression, and I actually believe that number is much higher. I think that people are functionally depressed and don't know it. That's just my thoughts. Anyone else?
I believe that's it. That concludes the
Okay.
discussion.
Listen, we have done our job today, and I hope that you guys have all enjoyed Her Mind Matters Part 2, where we're looking at the PTSD of being Black and being a woman and being in leadership and the effects that our mental health has on the way in which we do work. May I give you a word of encouragement? It's always important that you acknowledge where you are, but it's more important that you become who you need to be. And that only happens when we are truthful about where we are right now. So, whatever state that you find yourself in, just because you're high, low, or whatever the case may be, does not mean that you're a bad person or that you're a person that should not be trusted to be a leader. But if you're in denial and refuse to accept the truth about various things, then yes, you might not be suitable to be a leader, because a leader needs to be found to be integral about every situation. And doesn't mean that you're going to broadcast that you're anxiety prone, but there got to be somebody that you can be able to share something with, at least to be able to help alleviate some of the stress that non-talking about it puts on the body. I pray that this has been a blessing to you. Her Mind Matters Part 2 series coming directly to you from our Mental Monday show. I've been your host, Dr. Lakita Long. I pray that it's been something that has been encouraging to you, giving you an eye-opener, and that you can just kind of grab and go and do something more. Check us out again on our next Mental Monday show. Looking forward to seeing you there. Much love, and God bless each and every last one of you. Mwah! And have a great, fantastic day.